the Legends of the Force set is slowly coming to an end, but there's still time to build some new decks and do some new experiments. Tonight, I'm here to talk about Thrawn Data Vault, a deck that has been near and dear to my heart over the past couple weeks. It's a really fun take on the typical blue-green control archetype. A lot more interactive, a lot of actions, and a lot of things that I think may be tilted towards the direction of where this archetype is moving in the future. I'm Jordan from the Colorado Cantina crew, and tonight I have a special guest for the first time on the channel, Micky D from the Bothan Network, here to talk some deck tech with me. What's up, man?
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about Thrawn Data Vault. The deck, I think we both found it from the same place, from the Edinburgh PQ winner.
Yep.
And since then have been kind of tweaking it and looking forward to the archetype, not only for the end of Legends of the Force, but going into set 6 as well.
Totally. And I think that's like the fun thing about the Star Wars Unlimited community is like we potted about this a few weeks ago, a not original idea, talked about something I got beat by it on the internet and then wanted to reevaluate, and you were like, I saw the pod, I've been working on it too. And then I saw your list and I was like, oh, okay, you got some juice going on here. And then we're off to the races. And these sets are long, man. Right? Like,
yeah,
we both started working on this well into the summer, getting ready for Vegas, and now we're heading into the fall, and we have this period in front of us. We're both going to the Battle of Atlanta. We'll talk about that a little bit, I'm sure. And we gotta get ready for that. There's a lot of pressure to do that too, right? And we got Secrets of Power coming. So whenever you could squeeze in a fun little deck like this, I think it's really exciting. So just to lay it out, what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about the deck, how it is different, why we're into it, compare it to some of its other competitors in those archetypes, and then talk about the core cards, the things that are on the periphery, some things that we're excited about, maybe that we're gonna add and not add. We'll test. That's a periphery by my definition. Then talk about some archetypes, the future with plot, Secrets of Power, and more. So Micky, let's kick it off, and I'll start with you. Why Thrawn?
So Thrawn gives you a different way to tackle the blue-green villain archetype. We were talking a little bit before starting recording, but oftentimes these decks rely on like Vigilance and Dr. Pershing, and they want to take it later to the game. They just want to like control the board, take it late to the game so you start slamming triangles. Thrawn has some of that element. Like, it's still playing Power of the Dark Side, it's still playing No Glory Only Results, which is even better in this deck if you like grab a K2 off of it or something. But oftentimes you're not playing Pershings, you're playing different card draw engines, you're not playing Vigilances, you just want to build the board. And units like Cobb Vanth especially, but like and Large can help with this type of situation. You can set yourself up to like dominate the board and then eventually start racing your opponent. Like, your opponent has to respect all these units, and you can go wide and sticky. Like, they kill a Cobb Vanth, sure, I'm going to get 2 more guys off of that. They kill my Lor Sanseca from the hero package, cool, I'm going to buff my other guy. So you get to play this different style of game while playing with similar cards.
Yeah, and that's kind of an edge in this sort of archetype, right? Is that, people could say that control mirrors are boring, and I would say, if you think that, this is a really fresh take on what that might look like, right? And it also tilts, like I mentioned in the intro, I think in general, FFG has been a lot more hesitant to print conditionless removal since the early sets. And I think what we see is that for these sorts of decks to survive, they have to do a couple things. One of those things is create value, right? Like, have a little bit of a grinding engine. Otherwise, the Qi'ras of the world at a basic level, the card draw engines, the buff engines will kind of just outgrind you a little bit. And that's not what you want, right? But at the same time, like, it needs to be in the meta, right? Like, you need to have control for these different aggro builds, and it all is this cycle that keeps itself in check. But with Thrawn, like, you're doing things, your opponent's doing things, and that value that you get created on a given turn, and we'll go up through the list here in a little bit, that's what separates it, right? It's no longer power claim, it's power into Cobb Vanth, get 2 free actions, so on and so forth, right? And that kind of changes the flow of a lot, and also changes the way that you have to think about initiative, right? For the longest time, it was in control. I need initiative. I need to have control of that flow of the turn. But now with Cobb Vanth, it's like you have to pass, and you don't want to waste a Cobb Vanth. A lot of times if he's on the board, you're like, you could have it, I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure you get that trigger. And you were talking about it too. It's a relatively young deck, and like, I think post rotation 2, we're going to see a lot of these deck building ideas change, because no longer we're not going to have power in the format. Most likely, we're not going to have resupply in the format. we're not gonna have Covenant either. That's just a 2 card, but that's more of an effect I expect to see them print again.
Sure.
They seem to be caring about unit combat, and Covenant is a unit that produces more units, so what's more used to unit combat than that? So I think exploring this archetype now and getting the ideas down now before rotation, when that might become like the primary way to play this color combination, is also really valuable.
Yeah, and let's not forget that we have Qi'ra moving out of the meta later on. So let's start with
Mhm.
Qi'ra. Why are we playing Thrawn over Qi'ra potentially? I mean, Qi'ra is this archetype queen, right? Had really good results this weekend. We'll talk about those a little bit as well from the sectors. We had a Thrawn player getting 9, so that's nothing to sneeze at as well. But why is Thrawn attractive to you over Qi'ra?
I think Qi'ra obviously has this like explosive flip turn, and her ability is something that comes up sneakily throughout the game,
Mm-hmm.
but it's much more if you want to like play to the board and have more kind of actions you can take throughout the early game. Kira oftentimes is it feels pretty linear through the early game. It's like you have a resupply game and you have power games, and you go down one of those two routes. And then once you get into the
Yeah.
late game, you're slamming Star Destroyers. Whereas this deck, there's a lot more opportunities to make slightly different decisions and like I think your grind game is a little bit better in the early game with Thrawn because without Pershing, Kira just is kind of drawing 2 cards a turn and playing one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here you have Owen, you have Night Sister Warrior, you have Covenant, all these different kind of triggers. So I would play Thrawn over Kira if you want to get on the board early. Whereas versus Kira, which can help clear the board in the mid game. So it's really just like a do you want to commit to the board or do you want to try and just clean up the board?
Yeah, and I think in some way it's odd to say, right? But like Kira is a little bit more linear, where it's like ramp into big flip into OB, perfect line, get these Vaders out there, get X, get Y. Where
Yeah.
Cobb is much more. There's much more variance, which is not always a good thing, but that is
No.
it's controlled variance based on the amount of cards you get to see. So you're, messing with your likelihoods a little bit, right? But another thing
Yeah.
that I would argue, right, is that outside of that flip turn, outside of that threat of OB, just the value engine that Cobb creates with all these small units really go a huge way. And even if you
Mhm.
don't get like the patented, Cobb Vanth double claim, Chimera on 6, all these good things that are like crazy high rolly. It's also one of the better Anakin engines that we have currently.
Yes.
And I would say it's the second best in this archetype because obviously Kylo is just such, a tailor-made
Yeah.
thing there, right?
I think we'll talk about it a little bit of like I think here's probably the best for controlling the board in this archetype, but I think Thrawn's probably second best. I
Mm-hmm.
think Kylo is probably the best Anakin deck of this bunch, but I think Thrawn's the second best. It feels like jack of all trades, but not necessarily master of none. It's slowly starting to become like apprenticeship in all of them, and it's slowly starting to become a master at all of these things.
Which in some ways could be functional. So we won't do a full list breakdown yet. We're gonna do some comparisons first, but this is
Yeah.
Mickey's list, and this is what a lot of this master of none conversation is. You have a lot of different angles, right? You could
Yeah.
try to get your value going with ramp. You have 6 ramp option, which is typical in this archetype. You have great self defeat, which is something we'll talk about as we get into the episode a little deeper tonight. And you have just a
Mhm.
ton of ways to do things that your opponent isn't prepared for when you're facing this type of archetype, right? Like a lot of the time, especially I come from a lot of an aggro background, and as a Quinlan player, you do as well, right? Where it's like
Yeah.
you need to get wide, you need to control the hand if you're Quinlan in other ways, but now it's like you need to get wide while I'm getting wide, right? Like
Yeah, exactly.
and then on top of that, you get one of the greatest combos in the world where you get to spend resources you don't have. Which in this game, those are things that's like a time honored tradition. Going
Yep.
back to
Research
Boba,
sheet, baby.
right? Han 2. We hate that. Like no one wants that to happen against you, but it's when it's us, it's good. And that's what we really like to see. Okay, so with Qi'ra, like I said, it is no pushover. But again, 4 or 5 months down the road, see you later, right? And a lot of these things are going as well. And then let's talk about Kylo, right? So why this over Kylo? And for me, it would be because it's a lot less leader dependent. It's a lot less specifically easy to counter, right? I think and I think you helped me come to this realization, Mickey, whether you like to know it or not. But I think I got a little bit of a smack in the face to how hard tech can be against you in a field, right? And when I mentioned this, Mickey's nodding his head, but unfortunately, we had the pleasure of playing each other in the first round of day 2 in
Yeah.
Galactics, right? And we sat down and I was like, oh, I don't want to play Quinlan, and I especially don't want to play you playing Quinlan. And for
Yeah.
the rest of the day, I ran into like 2 Cads, 3 Talzins, 1
Yeah.
Pal, another Quinn, like all these things
Yeah.
that made it really tough. And I was like, I have to reevaluate how I feel about Django level threats, right?
Yeah.
And when a deck becomes that dominant, you get massively teched for. Think about Qi'ra. How hard did you
Mhm.
tech for Qi'ra when you were playing Quinlan?
Yeah, and the end of step 4, a ton. Like, you have to be ready for it.
Yeah.
Like, not only in deck building, but in game planning. So, like, that's another reason is to maybe play Thrawn over either of these decks is people just haven't seen it as much, so they don't know what you're doing. It's
Yeah.
like they claim with the thinking, "Oh, that's no threat." Then you just like all of a sudden pop your Cobb Vanth, like you timely it in, get 2 guys, you're flipping, you're doing a bunch of shenanigans, and so the surprise factor of Thrawn is also right now pretty high.
Yeah, so for me, Kylo is just a little bit too easy, especially in Data Vault. To you
Mhm.
like you're looking out for a couple things, right? The timely Vader, you're looking out for the huge
Big
flip
4.
turn, the legal authority, the craving, which don't get me wrong, those are awesome things. And I'm trying to
Yeah.
timely Vader as well. But
Yep.
there's other stuff too. There's more, palette to it.
Yeah. An additional part that I think is especially noticeable with Thrawn compared to Kylo, but also to Qi'ra as well, a little bit. Whenever I'm playing Kylo Data Vault, I find myself very reactive. Like I'm looting a lot, I'm taking a lot of like small little actions, but all the cards in my hand are like, all right, this is a removal spell, this is a removal spell, this is a ambush unit and Maul that defeats a thing, this is an Avenger. I don't really want to play on an empty board. Like so sometimes you're sitting there with 5, 6 cards in your hand, but you don't want to play any of them because you
Yeah.
want your opponent to play first. Whereas with Thrawn, you have a lot of those reactive tools with like Power, Devastator, Avenger, and Maul, but like you get way more proactive threats with like Cobb Vanth, especially. But even a lot of these little guys, and Chimera is a great mid game proactive threat to develop the board while also keeping all these reactive tools in your hand.
Yeah. So before this kind of this iteration of Thrawn Data Vault, and like I said, we got to give a lot of credit to, and I mispronounce it every single time, so I'm gonna like phonetically say it, pulling it out. But we got it from
Quilgrim? Yeah.
Twilgrim, and before that, people were playing the deck too, but just a little bit
Yeah.
more standard in
Mhm.
terms of what the archetype is. And when you look at it, right, you're like, oh, okay, now I kind of understand
Mhm.
how and what these differences are, and what that kind of means. And like when I was playing this earlier, we were both on Towson Red at the time, but I was really getting ready for the second PQ here in Denver, and I was loading up
Mhm.
my Towson deck with Hand Hate to be able to face these impending Iden Data Vaults and stuff like that never came,
Mhm.
but I was ready to face them up either way. And I was playing a Thrawn, and on like turn 3 or 4, I was like, am I about to Force Lightning this Night Sister to stop a double card draw
Yeah.
here? And I was like, I think I'm going to. And I did it
Yes.
again, and I didn't feel good about it, especially knowing all these huge threats that are coming, but it felt like the
Mhm.
right thing to do. And in these situations, Thrawn's a little harder to deal with. Okay, so versus Palp, for me, if I had to knock it down to one thing, is that I'm a little afraid to put that into an aggro meta, right? I think that
Mhm.
that will probably maybe 1 for 1 give most control decks a hard time. I think here we might have a chance based on how wide we could go, but I like our chances in
Yeah.
the Palp yellow a little bit better. We'll probably talk about that a little bit later, but why this over
Mhm.
Palp for you?
You kinda nailed it on the head of, like I think congrats to Bobby Sapphire, by the way,
Naturally.
winning a sector championship with Palp Yellow, and I think he picked the perfect time to play Palp. Like, I think this weekend, last weekend, and next weekend are gonna be, like, Palp's reign a little bit of,
Mm-hmm.
like there's a lot of Hantu blue. There's a lot of like Qi'ra rising in response to some of that, and like Palp can kind of go over the top of those. And I think he cracked it in where he seemed to have a very confident game plan into Qi'ra, where I was not as comfortable with Palp Yellow into Qi'ra. And if you feel that way, I think Palp is a great choice. But Sabine is always lurking, and especially if like with the rise of Palp Yellow and these cures, if like a Kazuda starts to creep back into the meta, or Sabine is always lurking, like a Vader, I start to get scared of Palp Yellow of like I need my specific tools to win these matchups, or else I'm just kind of floundering and playing
Mm-hmm.
non games.
I
Whereas,
get concerned
yeah,
about, round one in a tournament
yeah,
getting paired into some channel we call BS pilot decks, like a Wedge
yep,
Blue or something.
yep,
Shout out to Wedge Blue players, but I don't want to play you in round one. Like, so that's what I'm afraid of with that leader. I think the way that you kind
yep,
of led up to it is perfect, because when you sit down and you're like, oh no, this deck that is not a quote unquote a good deck is about to
yeah.
hand my ass to me.
Yeah. Like, I prepared perfectly for the meta,
Yeah.
but, Asajj Tarkentown comes rolling up, and I'm like, "Well, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
I'm getting beat for 11 in space."
Absolutely. So let's pull up the list again, and we'll do a little bit more of a deep dive into what's going on. We'll start with your list, Micky. Like we said, it has a lot of the standard blue green villain stuff: Power of the Dark Side, Resupply, Super Laser Attack, Devastator, all like those things that you expect. Take us to
Mhm.
where you wouldn't expect.
So, Owen is we were talking a little bit before recording, but the heart of the deck for me is Owen and Cobb Vanth. Cobb Vanth leads you to wanting to build these 2 drops and
Mm-hmm.
leads you to, like, what are some interesting out of aspect options you can explore? Lothwolf is one of those great options. I'm on the Lawrence Santeca because it's a win defeated, so you can play it on curve with Dr. Krennic
Mm-hmm.
with costing 1 less. And then you start looking at these out of aspect cards and like, well, this is great with Anakin. And Owen finds force units and Anakin's a force unit. So like a lot of these glue pieces start coming
Yep.
together and you just like it holds the whole deck together. Some more interesting things. You get to play a heavy Snoke package in this list, which is slowly starting to get pretty good again. Like, it's annoying for Han2 Blue to deal with. It's
Mm-hmm.
great against those space aggro decks if you can get there. It can lock out like one of the tech cards for the mirror seems to be timely reinforcements, and this card just shuts that down after they slam it. So, uh, Owen digging for some Snokes is a nice feeling. And then Malevolence is a big one. We were talking about some self-defeating options, and there's a couple different ones. Malevolence is the one I chose, mostly because like it can help just produce a big body for OB as well as to interact with space lanes if your opponent's not interacting with you at all.
Yeah.
And if you timely intervention a Malevolence and you just like ambush their pilot leader, freeze their big falcon sitting there for a turn, get an OB at the next turn, it feels so great. So it can be awkward at times, and it's definitely a card you resource in a lot of matchups. But when you need it, it feels great.
Yeah. So we've been talking about the value engine all episode, all video, right? So
Yeah.
that's number one. It's the value engine, and specifically, it's the value engine at different parts of the curve, right? We have the 1 cost value engine in Owen, 2
Hmm.
costs in Night Sister. Krennic in a way is a value engine, getting that when
Yeah.
defeat discount. Then we have our Cobbs and the
Yep.
Chimera. Say no more, right? Then
Yeah.
the next part that really separates it to me, right, is the heroic package that we run, and that's based
Mhm.
on a lot of the value engine stuff. So it's all kind of together. It's like a little bit of a synergy.
Yep.
And then on top of that, it's a self defeat, which you hit on, right? So those are the areas that make this list feel on first sight just different, right? Like there is
Hmm.
no scary Childson type unit. Like you're not running Fel the Dragon, right? Like we're not running Rivals
Yeah.
Fall, right? Like there's a
Nope.
lot of things that you would expect in a standard control deck that you're not doing now. And potentially on the meta, you might be main decking a restock, and all these things are subject to change. Like Micky mentioned, it's a really young deck, right?
Yeah.
But those are the things that you focus on. So like when Micky said, he was talking about Lore Santeca and Lothwolf. Oh, you're off Lothwolf now. Wow, no Lothwolf for you, right? Or am I missing it?
I'm off of it.
Yeah.
I think it's correct to add like very young deck still attacking.
Yeah.
So I think that list was 61 cards. There's a lot of changes you can make. I think it's correct to be on 4 or 5 heroics, and you
Yeah.
probably want 1 or 2 Lothwolves as well. But overall, I prefer the Lore Santecas.
Yeah, I think Lore is really, really growing. I mean, it looks like you added Inferno 4 in that spot,
Yep.
which also is really good.
Yeah.
So on my end, our lists are like a little different, right? Just a couple of cards here and there. And that is, I'm running Lothwolf and then 2 Lore Santecas. Maybe I balance that and go in and out. But I really like having the 2 of them. Originally, Twilgrim was running Yoda, which I think has some merit as well. Gets card draw,
Mhm.
gets the defeat, but it was a little too expensive, and I kind of wanted to, after speaking with you, I wanted to go all in on the Cobb loop of things and make sure I could get one for free if I could. And then for me, instead of Malevolence, I'm going with Morgan, which I found is maybe a little bit better in like aggro matchups going against it because it restores. And, you know, honestly, like I said when we were getting ready, I've been OBing her a lot. And it just, I don't love doing that, but it happens to be in the curve, right? So
Yeah.
for me, I've chosen those two, Lord Steka and Loaf Wolf, with Morgan as my self-defeat. I think that Malevolence has a really good place as well. And as we were talking about it, like, you know, we talk about the unexpected nature of this deck, and Malevolence coming in is definitely unexpected, right? So I think one thing that we should hit on with lore specifically, because, you know, you look at them and you say, it's the unique tag thing, like, you know, this Luke Skywalker thing isn't so great, like whatever the combo is you're talking about. But I think there's a couple reasons why he's so impactful here. And also I'll kind of go back and forth. But I think one is that, like, you know, he's a 3-2 in a point in the game in a lot of matchups where you need to kill things, right? Like we talk about getting the value engine online and stuff like that, but we also just like can't get run over.
And being able to double trigger the experience to like get certain breakpoints, like if you have both Lor Santeca and Loth Wolf, making your Loth Wolf a 5/5 just means like Sabine can't beat through it. K2 can't beat through it. There's a lot, like 5 is a good breakpoint.
Yeah.
Making your Anakin 7 power, making your Thrawn 6 power is huge. So just like getting that extra experience really makes it feel worth the extra resource it costs. Like I wouldn't want to play it for 4, but with Krennic out, Lord Santeca costs 3. And so like being a 3-drop 3/2 with that one defeated on curve, being able to double it, that feels totally reasonable. Obviously, like you're playing it because it's the hero up for Anakin as well and something to get off Cobb Vanth. But if all else fails and you have like a hand of Krennic, Lord Santeca, Anakin, I feel great going Krennic into Lord Santeca, and then like maybe that Lord Santeca trades and puts 2 experience on my Krennic, and now I have a 4/4 Krennic, and then that sets up a bigger LB, and it feels like such a glue piece for this deck.
It's a connector piece, right? It's like the role player that gets you there, which is funny because like he occupies a slot that you would read and be like, oh, that's a buff.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a lot more than that. It's like a defensive thing. It could be an offensive thing, but on top of that, like obviously we want it to be free, right? Like in a perfect world, it's free, but at resource 11, paying 4 isn't the end of the world, and paying 3 is oftentimes pretty good. And you mentioned getting Thrawn up to that 6 power, but man, you get him up to 9 HP as well, right? Like you're safe from mauls, you're safe from, like, you know, we saw some Fennec getting play from Bobby Safi, like we mentioned, from sectors. Like these are big units, right? That could come in and do stuff. And on top of that, you know, you get Loth Wolf, which is a great sentinel for the aggro game, which we are deficient to, right? Like we need to get our engine online or we will lose, right? We can win, but it's with our engine getting online, right?
Yeah, you can't stumble in the early game, and Loth Wolf is a great way to recover from a stumble. Like obviously this archetype has 4-drop 3/5 sentinels, but at the end of the day, it just needs to be a wall to like take an attack, preferably 2. And sometimes Loth Wolf can take 2 attacks. Like it can eat the shield off of L3 or something. Oftentimes it's only going to sink 1, but that can be enough to get you to the following turn where you can set up your Anakin, you can set up your Barrage, you can set up your flip turn to start to stabilize the board. So like when all else fails, paying 4 for a Loth Wolf, while doesn't feel great, feels adequate. And like that's all you need, because once you get to the late game, you're slamming great threat after great threat.
Yeah, and on top of that, you could do great threat, and maybe you have an extra Cobb coming in, right? And then all of a sudden you have a great threat with double power insurance and stuff. Another great tip here is that when you get Cobb double claimed or single claimed, sometimes you get a lore in the discard pile or a Loth in the discard pile. You don't have to claim it immediately, right? Like if you're gonna play an Anakin that turn, leave it there, right?
You
and
can
like
play the Anakin first, and then play the guy.
And then if you want to leave it, if you have an Anakin next turn, I could hear an argument for leaving it there as well, right? Especially if you're playing versus one of these decks where you need what we're going to be talking about next, and that's like the self-defeat package, right? So we're obviously teching for it. In Thrawn Yellow, you see a lot of like merciless contest, and that's one of the options that we have here. Why don't you take us through why you went with Malevolence and just dive in it?
Yeah. So we'll talk about merciless contests in a little bit too, because it is very much on the fringe for me of
Sure.
like cards I'm considering. But malevolence, I think where this deck is most efficient is space aggro specifically. Like Sabine, I've been surprisingly positive into, not
Hmm.
necessarily like winning every game, but if you go to Swoo Base, I believe it's got almost a 50-50 win rate with Sabine, slightly under in the past 2 weeks since the force throw ban. So the Sabine matchup is surprisingly okay, mostly because like you can test ground super heavy and they are lean more ground than like a Kazuda. And Owen Lars is huge. Like they just never want to kill it. Sometimes that guy will restore you 8 to 10 life throughout the course of the game. Space aggro is where things get tricky, and I think Malevolence is the best self defeat option, specifically against the space aggro decks. You just set up your ground, for the first couple turns, you're getting beat down, and then you either slam Malevolence, sacking a couple things, or you get to timely intervention of Malevolence, which I think
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier, and just lock down space for that one turn, start to clean things up, and then from there, like the restore two on that guy's also clawing you back into the game. It's a big body for overwhelming barrage,
Hmm.
and it's when it lines up, it can single handedly steal games from space aggro players.
So,
Um,
what turn are
yeah.
you ideally trying to get that out?
Usually turn 5 or 6,
Hmm.
depending on if you ramped or not. And so, like, if it's a Kazuda, oftentimes they've deployed already.
Sure.
And being able to, I believe, if they pilot anything except the hauler, or if they like have a clown car falcon with multiple pilots in
Sure.
it, the ambush part of it can kill. It'll have 7 health or less. So that's big. And if it doesn't, then the ambush part I'm usually trying to pair it with timely intervention, which is
Yeah.
why it's a little bit later. The ambush part of it can kill something else while freezing the big falcon, and then gives you extra time to dig for an answer. Um, so it is a little bit later in the game than something like a Morgan or a Merciless contest. But if the stuff you have hanging around is stuff like Owen, and even stuff like Cobvanth or like Onyx Squad. Well, Onyx Squad's probably trading itself, but I'm
Hmm.
okay with specifically like Owen sticking around for a couple turns, healing me a
Sure.
couple life, and then I pitch it away, get this big body, and dig for my Anakins at that
Yeah,
point.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think there might be a world that exists that, especially if it's a really heavy space meta, where you're playing both Malevolence and
Yeah,
Morgan, right? So it's funny because the reason that I picked up Morgan in this slot. So I said the same thing. I said I'm tired of these space decks, not letting me kill my units, right? Like
hmm
I could ramp, I can't get my value going, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, it was like I get to draw a card, which is good. It's a force unit check with Owen, also good, right? And then the undefeated, the on attack, letting me kill things and claim those abilities. So I think
yeah,
both are really good. Like you said, merciless contest I think is interesting, but I don't really, especially when I'm playing other decks that I'm like scared can go late with me. I don't want to remove any units for them. I want to make them do that work, generally
yeah.
speaking.
So Merciless Contest kind of ties into my other card that's big in my mind on the periphery, which is Bounty Hunter's Quarry.
Yep.
So Bounty Hunter's Quarry is really interesting, especially if you're playing the Yoda package. Because like Yoda, I wish that guy cost 2 and with just weaker stats, because then it would be the perfect card. Not being able to pull Yoda off of Cobb is a big downside. But it is a force unit that you can pull off of Owen Lars. It is a win defeated that costs less because of Krennic, and it has Restore 2. These are all great things. So I wanted a way to cheat it into play. So for a while there, instead of Malevolence, I was testing Bounty Hunter's Core. If I have Bounty Hunter's Quarry, the issue then becomes oftentimes your removal just isn't great at claiming that. Power of the Dark Side is like they could choose another unit. They're probably slamming a unit first action on 3R. Merciless Contest, I think, helps in that. You just get this abundance and you eventually will turn to get it.
Hmm.
But like no glory, you kill it, you take it and you kill it. But then where's the bounty going, right? Like you're the one that killed it. So it gets tricky there. And you just have to start to fit in like takedowns and fell the dragons. And then the deck just starts to lose its identity a little bit
Yeah.
and move towards like somehow with 60 cards, it's still not
It's
enough to fit
tight,
everything
man.
you want in.
It's
So
tight. You know, we've both been joking around about like making fun of people that are running like 62, 63 cards, 52, 53 cards, whatever. I'm sitting here 61. It's maybe it's okay, you know.
yeah,
But it's very meta specific, like we mentioned, and also, you know, I don't know if we could play that fell takedown game the same way that Qi'ra can, like the
yeah.
same way that we're saying our edge is in this value engine and otherwise their edge.
Mhm.
You know, I used to do a lot of like jujitsu, right? And I would do competitive jujitsu and stuff. And I don't really have the typical body type. I'm like a more of like a stocky individual. And you know, in jujitsu, you want to be like limber and stuff. And like, I don't want to play a game where this guy's going to be putting his legs on top of his head and making me. I want to, you know, exert
Yeah,
force, right? And I
yeah,
think it's
exactly.
important to recognize where you are, right, and who you are, and all these things when you're playing a deck. And the list is tight. You know, I think if you were gonna do the bounty hunters package, the bounty hunters quarries package, I think you have Yoda. Then that's kind of a given. And then I think you
Mhm.
probably only do one other heroic. I think you
Yeah,
take one of the other two drops out, and then
you either have
Cobb
to cut
gets a little
the low.
weaker, but you know.
Yeah, and that's why like it was interesting. Oh, it's almost the perfect card, which is why I think it was worth exploring, interesting to have in the deck.
Hmm.
But it's not quite the perfect card. And while it's like Lor Santeca and Lothwolf may look worse on the surface, it doesn't have as much synergy. It's not as much of an all-star. Like you said, it's the perfect role player coming off the bench, getting you like 8 points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And that's all you need. Coming in super clutch when you need them to, and just leaning into one or two game plans as opposed to trying to like dip your fingers in five or six of them.
Yeah, I think
Like
that's
you
a really good
mentioned,
point.
I think Kira's just gonna Qi'ra is the deck to play if you want to just like removal, flip, removal. It does that better than any other deck in the format, I think.
Hmm.
Whereas this is a just lean into your strengths. Play the two drops, I think. Like make your Cobb Vance as explosive as possible, make your Anakins as explosive as possible. Sorry, Yoda, you're gonna be on the bench for a bit.
Yeah, and try to figure out like how you could make an innocuous unit like Lor Soteca really impactful in different purposes, right? So obviously we mentioned getting Thrawn bigger OBs, but imagine you're playing another Data Vault deck and you're dueling Anakins, you're dueling Vaders
Mhm.
and Mauls. All of a sudden, your 9-8 Maul is a lot better than their 7-6 Maul, and other, you know,
Yep.
and so on and so forth, right? And to that point, with buffs and experience tokens, another card on the periphery for me, and got to give it credit again to another deck we saw in Portland over the weekend. Didn't have the greatest runs, but some really creative ideas in the list, and that's Apology Accepted coming in. And that's a card that I
Mhm.
honestly never considered. It's a 1 drop, and it says defeat a friendly unit. When you do so, put 2 experience tokens on it, right? Or on something else, right? So you claim that, and oh, baby, right? So I
Yeah.
didn't think about that, but that's some really interesting self defeat, and it's cheap. That's the thing that's really interesting to me, is it's like a 1
Yeah.
cost, and I have control of it, and all that good stuff.
I think it supercharges your Krennic draws because you can go Krennic into either Super Laser Tech or Cobb Vanth, either of your 3 drop when defeateds, and then trigger that immediately.
Yeah.
Being able to resolve a turn 2 double Cobb Vanth or getting that ramp off, plus now your Krennic's bigger. Like, I think it can feel a bit high rolly, but it's probably another one of those cards that feels very glue PC, and it can help you with these explosive starts with Krennic, but later in the game, it can still set you up for some big plays down the line.
And then also on top of that, right? You could supercharge that Krennic, and that's like a ideal, like, you know, what we want, right? Number one. And then number two would probably be, hey, like sometimes 4 is a little awkward if we don't go double 2 drop. If we don't have
Mhm.
3 drop Owen or ramp Owen or power Owen, now all of a sudden we have this other this curve filler that helps us.
Mhm.
Oh, you know, it's our 5 drop. It's our choices are something for 5 or 4, and I don't want to play OB because I don't have a great target. Like it kind of just greases the engine a little bit, which is I think really interesting. And then the last one that we already kind of talked about a little bit, you mentioned it as like a mirror breaker, and that's timely reinforcements. I've been messing around with that this week. I think that's currently in my sideboard
Mhm.
here as a 2 of. And I got to give credit to Rebel Trader. I was commentating one of his games for the sector qualifier last week. And it was a Kylo Qi'ra mirror match. And at one point, I believe he had 14 tokens out, right? He did timely reinforcements and then another one the following turn. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is ridiculous. Also begging for a Snoke to come out, which is great for
Yeah.
us, right? But like,
Mhm.
it was just comical. And he had all but 3 tokens. He had to use 3 turned over cards. So props to him for being prepared. But yeah, I think that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I agree, and that's a card I've liked for a long time, just in general, like, even back in Set 4, I was exploring it in Vader of all decks, and then it kinda started to pop up in those Ray Data Vault decks as a mirror breaker, as well as I think it really helped you in the Qi'ra matchup and in the Quinlan matchup, and it's a card that is always on the periphery in any green deck I'm thinking about, and it's especially interesting here because it helps play into that strategy of, like, it's a Thrawn's a deck that likes to have the board and build bodies on the board, and these one card like Army in a Cans, Cobb Vanth qualifies, but so does Timely Reinforcements, and it's not a win defeated, but it is playing into that similar strategy of like, all right, you just obeyed me, here's a Cobb. All right, you just super laser blasted me, here's a Timely Reinforcements. One card must answer threats that are really awkward to deal with.
Yeah. And it goes back to like that concept that you talk about with like capture, right?
Yeah,
Where it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna super laser blast your stuff, but then I get my stuff back, right? Where you're almost starting with a little bit of an advantage if you have an Owen out, if you have a Cobb
yeah.
out in those spots, which is really great, right? So I think you might be able to argue that we're already kind of favored in those areas. But
Hmm.
you know, who doesn't want to, you don't want to lose game one. I think that's the thing that's scary, right? Like
Yeah,
neither one of us, and I'm speaking mostly for myself, I know your gameplay a little bit more than the average
yeah.
person probably, but like we don't want to play decks that are going up to the timer. You know, we
No,
don't want to be at 55 minutes in a round and be come on, you know, like that sort of
I,
thing.
I've had
But
my time with some
yeah.
Palpatine early in set 1 and 2, but man, is it nice having 20, 30
Yeah.
minute breaks between rounds.
Quality, you get to bullshit and have fun,
Yep.
you know, hopefully. But you know, you're playing Thrawn, you're like, okay, it's probably not going to be super quick, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And those other grinding matchups are really important, so I think winning that first game oftentimes is really important. As we look
Mhm.
at these sorts of things, are there any other cards that you want to mention before we get in a little deeper into some of the matchups and, you know, different archetypes?
I'll quickly talk about my sideboard a little bit
Mm-hmm.
too. It's Tale of Two Halves. Like the left two cards are very much for space aggro because we had touched on it before. I think that's the worst archetype matchup for
Yeah.
this deck. Um, I saw I believe Twilgrim's list had Fleet Interdictor, and that's a common choice. I want to be impacting the board a little bit sooner than that, so
Yeah.
I would opted for the Eager Escort Fighter, just being able to slam, kill Falcons, kill Victor leaders. Doesn't deal with the Hauler, but that's the only one. And Hauler is really only seen in Han 1 and Kazuda. And so like don't expect a ton of haulers around. And even then, like it's a good tool in those matchups.
Yeah.
Confiscate for similar reasons. Great against Chewbacca decks, great against pilot decks. Um, Randomly can come in a bunch of other matchups too if you just see like a random upgrade you don't want to deal with. And then the right half is more for those controlling matchups. So we had talked about we don't have the vigilance package, and you can side into like a vigilance restock package. But since your deck is already so good at getting the board, I think you can. The theory is I haven't tested it much, but the theory is that you can stress your control opponents removal enough to where like they're not going to be with Palp's returns and Relentless, they're not going to be able to answer every threat. And with a bunch of just random dorks flying around, your Relentless's power and Avenger protected.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes just one turn of Relentless is going to be enough to slam the door as opposed to having to have it around for 2 or 3 turns.
Yeah. And you know, with my sideboard, I right now I am experimenting with a little bit of a vigilance package. But for me, that is really because our archetypes and our meta in Colorado kind of always skew a little bit more controlly, and it's been coming back that way. I also kind of want to just find out as I'm testing at the end of this set, like my my feeling and your feeling too. I don't want to speak for you fully, but like
Yeah.
we feel like Thrawn is really well positioned in these grindy matchups. Like
Yeah.
versus Palp Yellow versus these other control decks. I think in a lot of ways
I
we're set
agree.
up with an advantage. But I want to know that and be more confident in my opinion because, you know, when and I think this is something that again I don't want to speak for the Bothan guys as much as the CCC guys, but like at the end it's the end of the set. We're not as like unified as like a testing
Hmm.
organization. Like we had a few of us going to sectors, we have a few of us going here. It's not like when we're all like rowing in the same direction and we could
Yeah.
like firmly solve a problem. And that's probably one of the fun parts of this type of season as well, where that's where like, you know, two different teams can kind of chill out and have a good time on a deck
Yeah.
like this with the
Exactly.
two of us. But like I think that's a little bit of a weakness right now where I'm not like as confident in my statements as I would be otherwise.
Yeah. Like working on a deck solo is definitely like it can be fun and it can be like a little bit of an escape, but having the confidence of a team backing you up, being like, "Yeah, bro, your opinions are rock solid on this," definitely helps with the confidence meter going into certain
Yeah.
matchups. And this is a deck that is just like part of it is just energy because like now for both of our teams being mostly US based, we have some European Bothans that are going to go crush
Yeah.
the regional this weekend, but like constructed events are for the most part over, maybe a couple PQs here and there, but all the big ones are done. And so being able to explore this deck, it means that we get this freedom, but also like there's so many options to tinker with, and trying to figure out the best ones for any given meta is going to be so hard week to week.
Yeah, and you don't have the manpower advantage where you're like,
Y-
oh, I could put 3 hours in, and my friend's going to put 3 hours in, and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. And so I want to test those assumptions, and the only way to do that is in tough best of 3 games with equal opponents and stuff like that. So,
Mhm.
but overall, I think our early results are good, right? And,
Yeah.
and I'm excited about where they're at, and I'm really excited to see where it's at in the future. So like we said, it's a little of a greedy deck. So we're the weakest towards space aggro. The ground aggro, we have enough things to deal with. That being
Mhm.
said, like, Sabine didn't have a great week last week. If I sit down, and most of people, if they sit down, you're not thrilled to see Sabine, but you have some stuff, right? Which is
Yeah.
good, right? And when it comes to mid range, I feel amazing. I, I
Yes.
I feel like I am so annoying. I feel like I have so many things for them to deal with where almost they have to play control for a bit.
Yeah.
I feel like they can't turn off my card draw. I feel like I could get my Anakin's turn. I feel like I'm actually like in the driver's seat. Like those are the games where I
Mhm.
get like a little greedy with like a double Chimera claim and stuff like that. But
Yep.
so hey,
The big thing to worry about with these mid-range matchups is specifically the blue-red hero force decks that are playing Force Lightning
yeah,
because of trying to turn on their own Anakin. Those can be annoying. I will sometimes just like play out a super laser tech early because you want to be doing that in general. But like, I think sharp Hantu blue players or Anakin blue players with Force Lightning are going to spin that Force Lightning on the Super Laser Tech, and I think that's my preferred target for it because then it protects my Cobb Vance and my Owens and my Night Sister Warriors. These are games that are almost certainly going to go long unless maybe they start with like an Ogdo Bogdo, but even then you have some tools to counter that. And so I'm not as concerned about ramping as I am accruing value in the early game so that like my bombs are gonna come down and absolutely take over the board in the mid to late game. And like beyond that, you just have some great tools to take over the board in the early game. You have annoying shielded units. You have the Cobbans, which if they don't have the force setting can like, or if you have initiative, you can just trade it immediately. You can get your value right away. So Han 2 blue, I think something like Qi'ra might be like a touch better, but that is completely speculation, and maybe Thrawn just dominates these decks even harder than Qi'ra does.
so
So
I think the area where you feel some weakness is just like we don't have as many crate answers, right?
yeah,
Like we're not running Annihilator that's going to kill every crate, and stuff like
yeah,
that. But I think to your point about the laser tech, I think you're 100% spot on. Like I don't want them taking my Cobb off the board. I don't want them taking my Owen off the board, and I don't want them taking my Night Sister off the board. If they don't want to let me ramp, let me ask another question. How many times have you played against a ramping opponent? Answer: a lot. How many times have
yeah,
you played against an opponent who is playing 4 resources from his discard pile for free out of aspect? Very few in
yeah,
relative
yeah,
comparison, right? So
yeah.
like that's what I really want. And yeah, I think Han's a great deck, right? And we saw some
Mhm,
great performances over the past weekend, right? But
mhm.
yeah, I think I would rather play that than like
Oh,
a Kasuda or something.
I'd definitely rather be on the Thrawn side versus Hantu Blue. It's just if I could like pick my deck for a given matchup, Qi'ra might be like very ever so slightly higher than Thrawn for me in that
It
matchup, but
could
I'm
be.
not sure.
Yeah.
That is, and either way, you're kind of dumpstering on the Hantu Blue matchup. Maybe not dumpstering's a strong word, but you're definitely favored. And I think the points you get into the other control decks and the other types of mid-range decks really add value to the Thrawn side of the equation.
Yeah. And Han's great. Kira's great. All these things are great. But they're also from the first 3 sets too. Right.
Yep.
And this deck is gonna change quite a bit over the next several months. And we'll talk about some secrets of power stuff before I get out of here. But the way that control works is going to change. They might reprint super laser tech or a worse super laser tech. They might reprint, power in a different way, or whatever you might come up with as
Yeah.
an option. But I do think it's really fair to say that over the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, these past 2 sets specifically, we've seen a trend more towards conditional removal. We've seen a trend more towards like removal that you were thinking, oh man, this is great and limited. Actually, here's a great example. We've also been talking about Han 2 this set, and we both convinced ourselves to play a little Protect the Pod along the way,
Yep.
right? And it's like, that's like the number 1 limited card ever, but like, or maybe
Yeah.
number 3, but whatever. I'm being hyperbolic. But it's that's the kind of stuff that we might be sad that in 3 sets might be an amazing card.
What we have.
And I think that's a great way to say it. We work with what we have, right? So like right now, we feel that the best heroic cards are a mixture of Lora Santeca, Yoda, Loth Wolf, etc. Right now, we feel like these are the best when defeateds, but with this archetype, there's so many other things that could happen, and all of a sudden, everything changes.
Yep. And so this kind of dives a little bit into leader design from FFG as well. A leader like Bosk, I'm not a huge fan of, mostly because it feels very isolated to one set.
Yeah.
Whereas with Thrawn, they're always going to print when defeated. It's similar like Cad Bane, they're always going to be printing Underworld cards. Rey, they're always going to be printing weenies that have 3 or less power. Thrawn, like every when defeated that is printed in a set, you have to look a little bit differently in the context of Thrawn specifically. Like, all right, how good is this card? And then how good is this card with Thrawn? Example being, this is a red card, but that 2-drop 2/2 that gets you a spy token when defeated.
Yeah.
It's a fine card. In Thrawn, that could be like a huge engine.
Yeah.
So
how about Admiral Ozzel? Double discard.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah. I'm not happy for that at all, right? So like these are really important things. And I think the last like major note I want to hit on before I grill you about your PQ choice this weekend is that I want to talk about like the future with this deck and what it looks like. We have mentioned it's a really young deck, right? Like there is going to be a lot. If this deck is successful, it's going to be because people like myself or Micky or people who are smarter than us collectively, right, come around and put a lot of work into it, and through that make the deck a lot better. But compared to Qi'ra, it's young. Compared to Palp, it's young. Compared to Kylo, it's younger, right? It's like the cousin that's like a couple years below, right? Everything else is a bigger swing. So my biggest thing right now is that all of those leaders have a really giant flip impact. 1, Palp, easy, hold back the crate, steal something, big bad. 2, Qi'ra, right? Like, oh my god, the aggro flip, OB, we've done it. Kylo, I think in Tarkentown, your team has really shown that. And then in Data Vault as well, and ECL and all these things. I do wonder, though, if the appearance of plot and the new stuff that comes out, and I haven't seen anything that's like, damn, this is it yet. But if there's something that all of a sudden makes his flip impactful too, and then all of a sudden I feel like we're having a different conversation, a conversation that there's almost no weaknesses in comparison, you know?
And like you said, we haven't seen an example of something like that yet. But like that Cad Bane unit obviously is incredible with Qi'ra, makes her flip even better. But like something to that effect of like, all right, I'm gonna flip, I'm gonna develop a body, I'm gonna remove a thing. But maybe it's like, imagine if Apology Accepted had plot. So like you get a trade with something, double claim that, and then you flip and get to immediately double claim something before your opponent gets to interact with your Thrawn. Something to that effect, I think, is what I would keep an eye on for a future plot card that they might print. I'm totally with you though. Like the biggest difference between all these leaders in Thrawn is the flip turn. And you can set up explosive flip turns with Thrawn, but it involves a lot of actions and it involves a lot of moving pieces. And that's part of why I think like Thrawn's also a tricky deck because you got to kind of sequence that and set that up a few turns in advance. But if we got a plot card that made it smoother, that made it easier to set up, that like did it all in one action, then we're talking about a real like top tier contender.
Yeah, I would. My wish list would be some sort of like plot ambush with a Qui-Gon Jinn like when defeated. Right, remove a unit, defeat a unit with like 2 or less.
That'd be insane,
or something like that. You know, that would be probably top of the list.
Even something as simple like I think ambush is a great call, but like imagine a Cloud Rider that had Onyx Squadron Brutes when defeated.
I'll take it.
That would be insane.
Yeah, you
Like,
know.
I get to spend 2 resources, finish off this thing, heal 4 from my base, now we're stable.
Hmm. Or another dream would be like a craving power like effect, or
Yeah.
something along the, or like a craving power that didn't necessarily do damage but triggered when defeated. That's probably greedy. That's not going to happen. That's like two on the Thrawn button. But like stuff
Yeah.
like that, I think is really possible. And also, like, I don't think when you look at those cards, they're like super unbalanced, right? Like on their own, it's not going to swing anything and be ridiculous. On the flip side, we're both like relatively rational. It's possible that those same cards make the Palp flip, the Qi'ra flip, and maybe less so the Kylo flip equally impactful. But
Yes.
yeah, we'll see. I'm wishful. I'm hoping that it's just us and not them. And then all of a sudden,
Yep.
we're happy we bought the showcase when we did.
Oh, yeah. Another interesting card that has been revealed is the 3-drop upgrade, gives +2/+2, and then
Yep.
when defeated, defeat an enemy unit that costs 3 or less, I believe, or is it 3 or less remaining HP? It's one of those 2.
Hmm.
Either way, I think that's another great, like, 3-drop play, which there's a lot of emphasis on 3 already in this deck between resupply, super laser attack, power, cobb vanth, but like making your 2 drops real threats that are annoying, especially something like a Krennic, punishing your opponent for removing the Krennic. Is really nice.
Hmm.
It does get a bit tricky with that card because if you put it on a card that already has a one defeated, you kind of have to choose which one you want to double trigger. But it's definitely an interesting tool to explore in this deck and see if it's like I make my Krennic supercharged, or like maybe you play like a Pike Sentinel at that point, and then you just give it a win defeater, and like you've got this thing that's gonna lock the ground down for 2 or 3 turns.
Yeah, I also saw one when defeated exhaust unit. I think it's a jump to light speed upgrade. That's like a pretty innocuous, relatively crappy upgrade, but in
Yeah,
general, like might be okay. Like
there's some interesting play there.
yeah, like one exhaust is a lot worse than two exhausts, right? And so on
Oh
and so
yeah.
forth. And that's really what the basis of this deck is. One is better than two, and sometimes two is better than three. You mentioned the sequencing,
Mhm.
and that's the huge thing, right? Like a lot of people say like this style of control deck is easy. And to me, I like Bosk. I do agree with you fully on like the contained to one set thing. But I thought for a control leader is very interactive. There's
Yeah.
cool stuff going on, but you run out of options and things to do. With this, you have to understand how you're going to sequence something, whether it is how you're going to claim, like we mentioned, or do you want a cob, or do you need a double onyx squadron right now? And
Mhm.
there's going to be games where both of those answers are correct, right? And
There's
that's good.
There's also some interesting play that you can do with Thrawn's exhausted state. Like if Thrawn is ready, your opponent's way less likely to want to trade, and they're way less likely. Like you can influence how your opponent plays depending on whether your Thrawn is ready or not. Like let's say you aggressively trade something early and immediately double claim the bounty or the win defeated. Now your opponent's gonna like want to kill all the other units that have one defeated, so you can't claim them on future turns. So you can kind of bait your opponent into that of like, all right, I'm feeling a little bit of pressure. I want to try and incentivize my opponent to defeat all my units. Let's trade aggressively early here and maybe double claim a bounty or a win defeated that isn't quite as good, but to try to incentivize my opponent to take the time to kill my units. So there's a lot of interesting head games and headspace in the. I, this is similar to like a Palpatine flip or like an unused ECL or Tarkin Town. It's one of my favorite aspects about this game is these
Yeah.
kind of like unused resources that are face up, but Thrawn is another, on a smaller scale, one of those that you can really play around with and pressure your opponent with.
Yeah, and I'm scrolling through some of our spoilers to find the one card that says like you may use the exhausted leader again, right? I forget the
Oh,
exact name of that.
Treya?
Yeah. So some good stuff there, right? It's in yellow, so not
Yeah.
the best color combination here, but for us, I think there's a lot of really fun things ahead for this, and there's like the one upgrade that you were talking about. And I think anytime that, like you said, we have to look very carefully at cards that may seem innocuous by themselves,
Yep.
and by themselves they are, right? Like, but when it's all put together, that's where we're at. And I do think,
Mhm.
and I don't really always want to say I trust FFG. Their testing is always going to be the way it is, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that it is a really big deal that they don't want hard control. I think they want
Yeah.
degrees of softness. And I wonder, and I question everybody, let us know in the comments and stuff. Is this the one that is like the softest version of hard control, right? Or however
Yeah.
we want to say it, like the one that finds that middle ground to be able to do all these things and not necessarily be weak to one or the other.
Yep. I think I don't want to speak for FFG. I don't know nearly anything about what goes
Sure.
on inside there. But if Thrawn Green was like the best control deck to be doing, I think they'd be ecstatic.
Yeah.
Like because it's very unit based, it's very board dependent. It creates a lot of interesting gameplay, a lot of varied gameplay, and like I think they'd be happy with like a Qi'ra on top as well. But Thrawn really epitomizes that like unit soft control.
Yeah. So speaking of varied gameplay, you've been having a great set, right? You've had two PQ wins, one with
Yep.
both with Quinn, and then you got a what, like ninth or 10th? What was it last past weekend with
Yeah,
Han?
I got top 16
Top
with
16
I
with
got it
Han.
with Han too. Yep.
Yeah, so that's very, very varied, right, across the
Yes.
area. Like, you know, you beat me up at Worlds. You know, we're 1-1 in our series now. We have to see, maybe we'll play each other
Exactly.
in Seattle coming up here, which I'm just
Mhm.
ecstatic for. I'm really excited to come down and hang
Yeah.
out with everybody. But you got a PQ coming up this weekend. If it's not
Mhm.
Thrawn, why? What else is it? Like, what's the conversation you're having internally?
If it's not Thrawn, it's because I just don't have the reps on it. So like my PQ is in a few weekends, so like I got
Okay,
some time still to get some reps. Like if it was this weekend, I'd probably be on Han 2 Blue, just
fair.
because it's I think the deck I've gotten the most reps in with recently.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the most comfortable with. Um, if it's not Thrawn, it's because I don't have the reps and I'm not comfortable with it, or the expected meta I'm going into is not conducive to it. So part of why I didn't rep Thrawn for this PQ I was in this last weekend is on up in Minnesota. I've experienced a lot of space aggro and a lot of Han 1, which I
Mm-hmm.
think are like the two worst matchups. So I was like, going into that meta, I don't think I want to bring a Thrawn, but it's very high on my list for my next PQ because more open meta and like we'll see how the meta shifts, but I think it's in a good spot right now. It's on the list with stuff like Hantu Blue or like a Kazuda. Basically, the best deck of the format I think is Hantu Blue, but I think Thrawn DV is a great way to answer all of that. And then if you want to go to the next level above that, which is like kind of where we're at, where we see Qi'ra doing well, Hantu Blue doing well, Palp doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think Kazuda is a pretty good answer to the like because Palpio is the step one to the Hantu Blue step 0. Let's go to step 2. Take Kazuda, beat up on the Palpatines and the Kiras
Yeah.
and the Thrawns of the world, while also having okay game into the Hantus. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where I'm at right now. I'm kind of like I'm gonna be watching the next couple of weeks, seeing what point of the triangle we're on a given week. But if my deck doesn't come from those three decks, um, I'd be a little bit surprised.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense, especially if it's not this weekend. I thought it was this. That makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
to just wait and see how it plays out. I will say that, like, you know, we both played Pal, but it's not an easy deck. I think we're gonna see people pick it up, and I think we're gonna see people struggle. I think Bobby makes it look easy, but that's because he has been
Yeah.
grinded and he's a great player and he put the work in, you know, all those things. And just like that, you have to
Mhm.
put the work in here as well. I might even say it's harder than the average blue-green villain deck to play in some way.
I'd
So
agree.
we'll be keeping our eyes peeled over at your results and seeing if you get the 3-in-1 set would be unbelievable. Are you still in like the top 10? I know after sectors you might have gone down a little bit, but you got to be still
I
be
don't
up
know if
high in
they've
the leaderboard.
I don't know if they've updated it. I would
Mm-hmm.
be shocked if I've fallen below like the top 20. I
Oh
think I
baby,
might have fallen out of the top 10,
let's
but
check it out. Let's check
uh,
it out.
let's see if they've updated it yet.
Yeah, they always say
Looks
it.
like they still haven't updated it,
Okay, so we'll
but
follow up there and we'll keep you all in the loop. But you've been dominating. You had a great run, and you know, I'm gonna say something about the current meta that I want to qualify it with. I mean, absolutely only positive things by it. But sometimes, like in life and in games and things, like sometimes you need like all your work and preparation to like intersect with like a really good situation, and like
yeah.
then you got to take advantage of it. That's like you showing up and like sitting down
Mhm.
and doing the work and being it. But like I was so happy for you when you got your first and your second, because it's like, damn, like this is the time. Like this is
Yep.
you seize it and you get it and you show people, which I love.
There was one more I could have gone to while Force Throw was still legal, and I'm very sad I missed it out in
Yeah.
Lincoln. That one was also won by Pop Yellow, so like man, could I have gotten 3? That's a bit greedy and a bit like pretentious to think that.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
I think I could have done well at that tournament. I was on a heater with
Oh,
Quinlan, so
absolutely, right? And I fully believe in that stuff. I think
yeah.
that like if you're feeling it, I don't think it's like something in the universe making you better or
No.
something. It's just like you're flowing, you're feeling it. Same thing with
Mhm.
Bobby, man. Two weeks in a row, or two in as many weeks, I
Yeah.
think, and then you're just
want to
like,
PQ into a
yeah,
sector. Yeah.
and different decks, different archetypes. Like you're on a heater. It's unequivocal, right? So
Yeah.
love to see that, and also you love to see your stuff over at your YouTube channel, Micky D.
Yeah.
Swoo. No, you're not making it like all the time, but every time that you do, I'm there instantly to watch it.
Yes. I meant to make a video after the Quinlan events and the PQ ones. I think I still will make a wrap up video at the end of the set talking
Mhm.
about like my journey through the set and the PQs starting at Worlds, going to my last PQ of the set, and just talk about my deck decisions, why I did it. So we're saving all of that video energy up for one big video. So stay tuned.
Yeah, and then what you can see is we're trying a new collaboration feature out here on YouTube. You should see all of Micky's information right below us, like right there. If not, it'll be right in the description. And also go check out the Bothan Network, right? Like we're so grateful for how much they do for the community. We're so excited for Beatle again. We got 2 teams coming down. Hopefully, if we play each other, it's in the late rounds again and not and have to start the tournament. But you know. For anyone that doesn't know, it's just a great invitational event. There's a waiting list available now, but I can't say enough about how fun it was. And even after going through Galactics, I still think the later rounds of Swiss and some of those events were the toughest fields I've ever played in.
Yeah, the density of it's, imagine the same great players that were at Worlds, at Galactics, minus the Europeans. Like the Europeans aren't there.
Players.
They're all there in Atlanta in a 128 person field as opposed to a 600 person field.
Yeah.
So every round that's more likely to run into just a killer of a player. And all of this great playing I've done, like I've had the fantastic opportunity to go to Atlanta, play in a bunch of PQs, play in Vegas. I think my favorite event still was the 3v3, just sitting down with two great players. Shout out to Rebel Resource Ryan and Lego Pizza Ian, my teammates from that event. They carried my ass. I went like 1-5 in Django matches. It did not feel great, but we still made it far.
Yeah, no, we had a great time, and you know it's awesome because we got matched into each other, and I wasn't expecting a Quinn to sit down. I sat down first, and I was like, you know, Ian's coming into me, so come on, Ian, let's go do it, and we'll go Django v Django. I was practiced, I was trained up, I was getting everything ready, and then you sat Quinn. I was like, oh no, we're gonna do this, and then it was Django Sabine, and then unfortunately for poor Sharky, it was his second CAD into Sabine Yellow. He played one in the first round and then one in the third when we played. So we were throwing him to the Loth Wolves, if you will.
Yes.
But yeah, also shout out to Ryan for his new venture. Really wish him the best over there. It's always fun to start something new, whether it's, you know, you leave something because it's great or because otherwise it's the new beginnings everywhere, which is just good stuff. So check out Micky's channel, check out all the stuff in the Bothan Discord and their YouTube channel across the network. Put all the links in the description, and stay tuned to see what deck Micky plays. And we were saying we wanted to go like 30 minutes, 35 minutes, and it was an hour and 2, so we got to work on this. We gotta be better, right?
We like to talk. It's all good.
So it's always great to hang out with you. Can't wait to hang out soon. And for Micky, I'm Jordan. Stay tuned, stick with us, and we'll see you after Philly.